Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Azure Takeoff show. So we have Taswar today, and so we keep doing this. It's better to to learn more from each other. Sometimes I actually am the one to lead the conversation, and today, Taswar, we need you to lead the conversation. So welcome
Uh,
on the show,
yeah,
and
thank you.
I think our topic today, because we have been following up on our compute platforms, and one of
Mhm.
the important Azure resources which I'm really bad at, and I really want to learn more about it. So which is the Azure Vnet. So
Okay,
so yes, Tashwar, what is Azure Vnet?
great question, Hatim. What is Azure Vnet? Vnet actually stands for Virtual Network. So it's actually a basic fundamental block of Azure, other than the resource Azure Resources. It's actually part of the Azure Resources, where it actually lays out the networking side of your Azure Resources and all these other components that go in. I'll give you an example of it. You probably have a modem and a Wi-Fi router at your home, sort of thing. There is actually a network that is running in it, but you don't actually see it. All these IP addresses that goes with it. It's the same for the cloud too. You could create your own virtual network inside of it and actually assign resources inside of it. So that's what actually the virtual network is. You could assign different kind of IPs to it.
That is great. So when you mentioned that I can assign different IPs, can I also use it to communicate with the internet? So for example, right now my router
Mhm.
uh, maybe has a public IP address which tries to connect with my other services.
So you could actually make your virtual network communicate with the outside network, so as in a public IP, or you could actually even limit it to say that this is my private network where I'm going to be running my databases. Nobody within. Think about it as this way: you are a corporation, and you want certain machines to be able to go out to the internet, but you want certain machines that maybe contains your human resources or financial information. They're running in databases in a different network that might have sensitive information. You need to be physically inside the office in order to get access to it. You cannot just go out to the internet and bring this in. That's where kind of like virtual network kind of helps out to explain to show you that, hey, you know what? There's computers that you take to your office that needs the internet access, but you also need to access the resources that you have in your office, your databases and all that stuff. Those are within those private networks. Let's put it this way. That's actually running. So you could communicate with the internet, or you could actually make it separate so that it does not communicate with the internet. You have to be within this subnet. Let's put it this way, because the virtual private network could have subnets inside of it. The subnet is communicating with this private subnet that only allows the peering of communications with it.
That is a great question. So I have something related to peering as well, but I
Sure.
will come up to it. So for the train of thoughts right now, I wanted to check whether I can interact with all my Azure resources internally. You said that it can be a private network or a public network, right?
Hmm.
So can I use it to interact internally within my Azure services or Azure resources?
So you could now. There's certain limitations for the virtual network. You could only per region, for example. So if you run it in UAE North sort of thing, you cannot actually easily communicate with like another virtual network that you might have in the US, for example. So that's where actually peering comes in. Sort of, you could peer to it. You could use VPN to it to communicate between those two other network. You could within the virtual network, you could communicate as much as you want. But when you talk about I want to communicate with my office in like Europe while you're
Yes.
running your virtual network over here, then you cannot, because every virtual network could only run in one region.
Okay, that's clear. So when you said that, can I connect that to my on-prem network? So that's a network, the other network as well. So can I do a VPN? You said.
Exactly. So I mean, there's no difference between, you could think about your on-prem in the virtual network. You could actually make it so that actually VPNs, you could use VPN to actually go in. There's also Express Route and all these other providers that could provide you a fiber cable all the way to it. Because let's say you're, I don't know, I'm just assuming you are video production service. You need like really like throughput that's going, because I'm uploading lots of videos to my cloud provider. to Azure specifically, then you could actually use some kind of a third-party provider to actually provide you with ExpressRoute to actually communicate directly to the Azure cloud. So there are those options. The other options is VPN, basically, because you want to be secure. So you need to actually authenticate yourself and then VPN into it and then transfer your data.
Got it. That's clear. Now, when we talk about this, there are two-part questions here. One is, how can I filter the traffic which is coming in? And when I mean by that is, I have a scenario also which was going in my mind, is I have few of the resources which are on Azure and I'm running a virtual network on top of it. Now, do I have to write all my security rules in terms of blocking access to that, or like how do I do that? So how can I filter it, as well as how do I block that restrictive traffic or make sure it's secure?
So there are multiple ways to doing it. The one that a lot of people know about is actually called a firewall, right? You could use a firewall to block all of that stuff. You could have rules written in. There is actually something more native provided inside of Azure too. We do have the Azure firewall too, where you could combine your rules. But there's something more native called network security groups. So you could actually have security groups that you predefined, saying that, okay, these are the rules that I want to apply for finance department. They cannot do this. They could do this or something like that. You could apply those rules, specifically network security group rules, onto the subnet. Let's say finance is running onto it. Or you could apply different rules to different groups. So there's multiple ways of filtering it in order for you to actually filter the network through it.
Clear. And when we talk about filtering now, so I had another scenario in my mind. So for example, if I have a request coming in from maybe an external resource, and it is hitting on one of my virtual networks, can I route the traffic to somewhere else? So maybe, I collect the traffic somewhere else and then I route it to, the different applications or different services which I have internally.
You could definitely route your traffic. There is gateways that you could actually use to route traffic. There's also routing tables too. They could route specific traffic to specific machines or specific services that you want to. So there's multiple ways to configure it. I mean, when we deep dive into those kinds of details sort of thing, I actually would like to show how does the CIDR block actually works and all that stuff too. But yeah, we could actually route all the traffic through a gateway, through routing tables.
Got it. And when we, so this is all clear, like I understood how, and what the concept behind this is. Can we integrate it natively with the Azure services, or there is, we have to manually do it for the services which we have, which we are using on Azure?
Another great question, Hatim. So yeah, there are multiple ways to actually do it. You could actually use something called Azure Private Link that you could actually connect directly to a service that you want to. Let's say you want to use Cosmos DB or something like that. You could actually have a private link from your virtual network to go all the way to the service that you want to do.
So my question here is, it was something eye-opening over here, and I have maybe two doubts in that, right? So when you say private link, how does it differ from the VPN?
So private links are more specifically to a service. So it's not a VPN that you're using. That VPN could actually allow you to log into the network. You understand? Mm-hmm. The private link is specifically to a service.
And the second point is, if I have my Azure service placed in different region and the virtual network in another region, it still would work, right? But I would incur a lot of bandwidth charges, maybe. Is that
yes? So? There might be bandwidth charges that you might want to be considering with, even if you're talking within different regions and stuff.
Yeah, I think that's very informative. One of the things which I would conclude here is, I know I can use a VNet now. I know, I can use it to connect to my on-prem services. I can use it to filter my traffic. I can use to route my traffic internally. I can use it to communicate as an outbound connection as well. And then integrating it with the private link, as you said, with my specific services in that case. So
exactly.
It is a great, insightful session, Taswar. Thanks a lot for your insights on the Azure Vnet. Anything else you want to share with our audience?
Sure. I actually wanted to share my screen and show you some of the CIDR blocks. That's the fundamental thing about actually VNets. So let me share
That's
my
great.
screen. So, team, I want to talk about CIDR blocks. Basically, this is the building block of like VNets. So you need to actually provide it with certain range of IP address. You know, when you have a router, it automatically configures 192.168 and all that stuff.
Yes.
But VNet actually provides you with the power of creating what kind of CIDR blocks do you want. So CIDR blocks is basically it's a description of blocks of IP addresses that you want. Uh, Normally, like I mean, you could choose anything 192, or like over here, you could see that here I just chose 10.0.0.0/16, and then you could see it down here. I have a count. The count is saying I have 65,536 IP addresses that I potentially use within this range.
Okay.
So you would tend to start with a bigger range because you need to split it up. You know what I'm saying? You're providing the virtual network with a large range, and then you're saying that, okay, from this range, 5,000 something, I might have multiple subnets within it. I might have finance department as a subnet. I might have accounting. I might have like a developer network and all these other stuff. So you have 65,000 network IP addresses to share. Now, if you actually decrease this number, it actually becomes bigger. So you can see, like if I go 0.0,
Okay.
that's how many IP addresses I have. If I go like 12, for example, I have this much. If I go 24, you can see I only have 256. So
Yes.
when you actually go out down to like a subnet, you could actually go /24 even to say that, okay, I only need 256 subnets within this range. And you would actually put like something like this, say 10.1.0.0/24 is the subnet for finance team. And then 10.2.0.0/24, 250. You could split it as many as you, from the 65,000, you could split it as much as you want. There's also another website. This is actually called CIDR.xyz, this website.
Okay.
So it visualizes it and tells you what the network mask is and the CIDR-based IP and all the usable IP ranges. So you could see the first IP range. It's going to be 10.2.0.1, and the last IP is going to be 10.2.0.20. I also want to note one more thing. Every virtual network actually has IP addresses that it reserves. So it's not just you have 256. I believe 5 of them are actually taken by Azure too, because it needs a gateway and all these other things. So they're already taken from you. There's also this other website called the Visual Subnet Calculator, which is kind of nice. I'll try to zoom in. So here you could see that I have 10.0.0.0/16, just like the last time. But here, what I did was I'm saying that I'm going to divide them. So I divided it into 2. Do you understand?
Okay.
Then, so these are the usable IP. I've divided into 2. And here's the other range of IP. I could divide this even more. I could say, okay, divide this into more subnets, sort of thing. So it allows me to actually divide and then divide how many subnets do I want. It gives you a range of IP, and you could actually define like, okay, this range starts from here and all that stuff. So you could actually define all of this stuff in a nice visual way to show you what is going on. From 10.0.0.0/16, I got this IP range. Actually, let's try to do this. Reset it. Okay. So this is the range that we started with. Remember how it's 65,000? And I could say that, okay, split it up. I want to split up the network because there's too many IPs. And we'll split up for you. And you can split up even more if you want to. Just click on divide, and we'll try to split up as many times as you want, so that you get a visual way of showing like this is the range of IP address versus that range of IP.
Correct.
In last demo that I wanted to show was actually, okay, so we would like to create a virtual network. So we could look for virtual network, not a virtual machine. So we already have some over here, but we could actually create a new one. So in here, we're going to create a new virtual network, and then the resource group that we're going to assign it to. So this virtual network name is going to be called Demo Hatim, since we like calling it Hatim. Right? How many Hatims do you have again?
I have to check my subscription now.
Exactly. So we're going to say next, we don't need a Bastion host. If we want to use a Bastion host is more like some people like to call it jump host too. So you could actually log into a virtual network in some ways in a more secure way because you SSH into a Bastion host. So this is a good way to actually have a machine that is highly secure. They only allow you to authenticate to it, and then you could get into your network. So it's some people like to call it jump host because you jump to other machine. Let's say you have a database server that publicly you cannot access it. You would log into this virtual machine, a virtual bastion host or jump host, and then you could actually jump to your database, for example. So I'm going to skip this one. And then here's the IP addresses. Remember how we were saying 10.10.0.0.16? So here's the IP address. And by default, Azure actually creates you a default subnet. So it actually creates one 10. So I could actually add another subnet over here. So I could say it's developer dev subnet, for example. And it's going to start with 1 and then /24, 256 addresses. I don't have 256 devices, most likely, in the developer network, because I don't have 256 developer personally. So I could just actually add to it. There's security you could add to it. There's NAT gateway that you could add to it. There's network security groups. If you have created security, remember how you talked about security group that could limit the access to it. There's also NAT gateway that you could introduce to actually control certain traffic that you want to go out and come in. The routing table that we talked about too. So I'm just going to say add this IP address. So there's dev network and default network. And then I click on next. And then if I want to tag it, so let's say my demo network, or just name. Demo network, for example. And then I say review and create, running the validation. There you go. And I could just say create it.
Okay.
It doesn't take much to actually create it. Now, once I've created this virtual network, I could actually jump into a virtual machine. And I could say that, hey, you know what? I want my virtual machine, which is, I want it to run inside the dev network, subnet, for example.
Okay.
So let this finish deploying.
Yeah, it's created.
Exactly. So now you can see that actually the virtual network is created. Demo Hatim, and I could click on subnets, and I'll see my 2 subnets. Now, you remember how I said like 256, 5 of them are taken actually. 5
Correct.
IPs are taken because
These are bad.
Exactly. Azure needs 5 IP addresses for routing and all these other stuff. It actually takes those IP addresses. Now, actually, I'm going to go to virtual machine. Let's create a virtual machine. Let's create a brand new one. I mean, you could create other resources, but I'm going to choose back our Azure Takeoff.
Yeah.
And virtual machine name, as we like, Hatim. Going to be running it as zone. And so I'm just creating it. And then if I jump to the networking tab, you'll see that actually I could choose this Vnet or the Demo Hatim one. From here, I could create the Demo Hatim one. And I could say that this VM is actually supposed to run in the dev network. So you can actually create, and you could say that, okay, it has a public IP or not a public IP if I wanted to. So you could actually do all this. You could have a network security group and all that stuff. So if I go and create this, so the deployment is in progress. I could go back. Let's go back to the virtual network machine with the network. And we're going to click on the Demo Hatim that we created. And we're going to create a diagram out of it. Click on diagram. So you could see right here.
Nice.
We have Hatim. Remember the VM? Subscription. An IP is configured. And the IP address given to it. And there's a network security group for it. Yes. There's all of this stuff. Just showing you how it's done. Exactly. So that's a nice trick that you have. You could actually see the network diagram of the virtual network. So cool. That's what I wanted to show for a quick demo today.
That's great, Taswar. Thanks a lot for your time, and this was an amazing demo as well.
Yeah, no problem. Okay.
Thank you, and see you in the next episode. Thank you.
And remember to subscribe.
Remember to subscribe. Yes.
Take care. Bye.